All right, this should help.
Yeah, that does.
Geez, I didn't think the fan would be that loud in your ears.
It almost sounded like a game, like on a race. It sounded like cars.
Yeah. Okay, guys, it's 7 o'clock. So I'm going to start, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag
of the
and to
United
the
States of
America,
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
Under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty,
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Okay. All right, welcome to our first infrastructure. I'm just going to, for purposes of recording and clarity, just make a couple of comments. Our panel, this is according to, we put a agenda on the, along with the link on the calendar for today's event. So we have in the panel myself, I'm the mayor of Ballston Spa. We have Trustee Raymond, we have Trustee Cormos, we have Trustee Baskin, we have Jeff Gories, who's the working supervisor of our Department of Public Works, and we have Eric Johnson, who is an engineer and the director of municipal engineering at Chazen Corporation, Chazen Companies, Inc. Okay, I just want to do just for this purposes, this is our first of, I think, probably a series of workshops on infrastructure. For our purposes for this evening, infrastructure is defined as water, sewer, and storm water, where, you know, we may be doing another one of these on this topic, but also we're going to do a workshop on facilities, but that's going to be at a later date. So for our purposes this evening, it's water, sewer, and storm water. What we're going to do is we're going to look at our set of projects, and we're going to prioritize these projects, and we are going to look at them and in terms of prioritizing and also trying to figure out where we're going to get the funding. Some issues we have had in our water, stormwater system we have known about for a while. However, we spent the first couple of years, and this should be noted, we spent the first couple of years working on getting our finances in order. So if we had, even if we had the money, you know, we didn't have money at the time. Now, very luckily, we do. So it's a perfect time to start looking at this. We have funds from the American Rescue Plan and the American Rescue Plan Act. And also the other thing we have is we have funds from that coming our way from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. I'm looking forward to what the acronym is for that's going to be. We should say up front that ARPA paid for the valves, and we have money allocated for the 2 pumps that we ordered a while ago for that we needed. But I should also tell you that those pumps, while we have the money allocated, which means that's what we're going to spend them for, but we're not going to pay for them until we get them. Delivery on those has been delayed due to supply chain problems. And they are expected, the last Jeff heard was they were expected to be in early February. Okay, in terms of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, there is, you know, just very briefly, there's $110 billion for roads and 55, which of course we're not talking about here, but $55 billion for clean water projects. Some of this is going to come through the state, but a lot of it, NICOM, which is our association, the New York Conference of Mayors, tells us that some of it is going to come directly to us. And just like the ARPA did, we've gotten over $200,000 2 years in a row from ARPA funds. So this is a very prestigious or auspicious time, if you will, for us to be looking at these things, because we now have the funding. So fortunately for us, our finances and the funding caught up with our intent. One thing I have to say also is I want to mention that we have an excellent water system. I've been hearing some, sort of hair on fire kinds of things about our water system. I just want to say that our water system is fine. It's tested daily. We have certified folks at the Department of Public Works who are testing our water system. Our water system is very fine quality. And if it wasn't, we wouldn't be able to operate. We'd have to shut it down. So I just want to mention that. A couple of things on time. This is going to be 2 hours. I'm taking a few minutes here, and I want to allow at the end of it public comment for 15 minutes. So what we're really dealing with is about an hour and 40 minutes for discussion of projects and prioritizing and looking at possible sources of funding. What we're going to use for that is something that was developed, the Ballston Spa DPW Capital Projects Plan. This was initially started, this grid that you're going to see by Jeff, Sean Raymond, and Liz Cormos back in 2019. It has subsequently been updated. I have to apologize. We will have this available for you. And of course, this time it has been updated by Sean, Liz, Jeff, and Eric, going back and forth via email and things like that to get this in shape. We're going to display it on the screen, and we're going to use it to go through what our projects are. And Sean is going to lead that discussion, but I want to thank Jeff and Eric and Liz and Sean for their work on this particular piece. And I will tell the participants here, this will be on the website tomorrow. Whatever you're seeing up on the screen, we're going to share screen. We've actually had a quantum leap in running of Zoom, and now I've figured out how to share a screen, which is a minor miracle. So we will share the screen, but what you're seeing up on the screen will be available. I'll see to it that it gets posted on the website tomorrow. I apologize, but that you didn't have it in advance. However, it was being worked on till about 4 o'clock or 4:30 today, and therefore, it wasn't timely for us to post it. So with that, I'm going to ask my co-host, Trustee Cormos, to share her screen, and we are going to, and Sean, you'll lead the discussion as we go through this, right?
Certainly.
Thank you.
So as you can see, hopefully, I don't know if you can make that a little bit bigger, Liz.
Yep, even bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I can read it, but maybe not everybody can. Go back one.
Yeah, I think that should be.
That's a good size. Okay, so as Christine related, some of the stuff that we originally had on our capital projects list from 2019 has already either been taken care of or is in progress, and the funds have been allocated for it. And you can see that at the top. There was West North Street, a stormwater project, and then Lowell Street, the booster station. We replaced the valves. And, you know, that, as you can see over in funding sources, you can see that was a combination of a Walsh grant and ARPA funds. And currently we're in progress with the hopes in February to start work on the booster station pump replacement. Obviously, everyone understands the global supply chain issues, and things are just taking longer than we're used to. So, but hopefully, in February or March, we'll have that taken care of. And you know, as we go down, we completed some stormwater pipes around Fairground Ave, Malta Ave, and Union Firehouse, and those were funded by the Dormitory Authority and some other funding. So, and then we have Saratoga Avenue Stormwater Project, which is currently in process, which the funds have been allocated for that project. And that takes us to something else that we've started, which is the water well capacity study that Chazen is conducting for us, with essentially the idea to figure out what is our capacity. Do we have additional capacity to potentially increase our customer base as it would, or in what do we need for our future needs? And I was just going to ask Eric quickly, what is the status of the study?
Excuse me. Thanks, Sean. The study has begun. We have started to do some coordination with Jeff and his team and begin looking at how to manipulate the current pumping system so that we can really test out how much the wells can do and how much they can produce, so we can assess how much capacity might be available. I mean, the trick here is, you know, on those hot summer August days, we want to make sure that there is reserve capacity. And as we're exploring, expanding the water system, really understand how much capacity is available. So I guess we're still sort of in the infancy stage of things, but we're making progress. And I think, in early next year, I think we'll have a study in hand and delivered to the village board.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And that particular study will dovetail into the next item, which is a water system feasibility study, because the results of that will kind of basically lead us into what our potential opportunities for either repair of an existing tower, or if it makes sense to replace the tower and potentially in a different location, to increase, to improve our delivery system if we do have additional capacity. So that would be very good to know if we do have any additional capacity above what we should keep for reserve. So I know we talked about that, Eric, briefly, and in our discussions, it was mostly, an idea of maybe picking a few locations and determining whether or not, it makes sense to do a replacement. I know one of the first steps is, since it's been a while since we've done an inspection of the existing water tower, that should probably be done at the beginning of this study or prior to the study, so that we know if it's even feasible at this point in time to do repair on our existing water tower on John Street. I don't know if you could just kind of briefly give a summary of what the feasibility study would cover.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So DOH requires water tanks be inspected every 5 years. The last time John Street was inspected was 2016. At that time, some deficiencies were identified. So the idea would be to do an updated inspection, get an understanding of the current condition of the tank, what are the deficiencies as they stand today, and what would the costs be to bring the tank back up to standard so that it could serve the village beneficially for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So that's option one, is to look at upgrading the tank and bringing it up to current standards. And then the next alternative, which has a suite of sub-alternatives, I guess we could say, would be replacing the tank, whether the tank is replaced at the current site at the John Street tank, which is somewhat constrained and maybe difficult and costly to accommodate, or are there better locations in the village that would be better suited for a new tank that could be constructed offline, potentially at a cost savings. So this first study is going to really look at, what is the optimum water storage path forward to deal with John Street tank? Is it really replacing or rehabilitation? And if it is replacing, what's the optimum location for the tank? And so at the end of the study, we'll have a recommendation for either a new location or rehab, along with costs, and that'll be a tool the village can use for moving forward with that tank project and potentially securing funds from various sources for that work.
I just have a quick question. From what I've heard, I'm not an engineer, that a new tank would be glass lined. And what's the comparable life of, if we restore this tank to, be compliant, versus, I'm sure the new tank is considerably more expensive, but what is the life of these glass lined tanks?
So generally, tanks are of three materials. Generally, concrete tanks, or coated steel tanks like we have at John Street, or glass fused to steel tank. And so the construction of a glass fused to steel tank is very similar to a steel tank, except that the coating is a glass glazing instead of coating it with paint, essentially. And so in our study, we will look at both alternatives, what makes more sense from an economic standpoint. There's a lot of variables that come into play in terms of the size, the geometry, the height of which direction makes more sense and which is more cost effective from a capital cost standpoint. The benefit of the glass lined tank is that they don't need to be coated, and so the operation and maintenance cost and the recoating cost is not there that you would have on a steel tank. So we'll examine both those alternatives and provide recommendations based on life cycle analysis.
Hi, Eric. Thank you. This is Ben. I'm just wondering, what's your timeline for starting the study and completing the study, do you think? Do you have the staff available?
We have staff available. The first step that we had considered with the mayor and Sean was to do a kind of a walkover in the next few weeks to identify a few of these potential alternate tank sites. That may be some of the more timely items and take more time to identify, where is there available land, where is land that we could acquire. And so, but once those sites are picked, then we can really kind of get to work and do our analysis. So, to me, this is a probably a several month type of study. I would think. Again, this is probably going to be looking at the early next year, whether it's January, February timeframe for delivery would be a guess at this point.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and
How about-
I'm gonna add in real quickly, that would be optimistic as long as everything goes, perfectly well. There could be a lot of other factors that once we start delving into it, That may complicate things, but best case scenario that, yeah, that early next year we would have the study done.
And remind me, if we're going to have the, not the assessment, but the inspection by DOH of the water tank, how does that, that's supposed to be done every 5 years. So we're at the five-year mark. So how long does that take? I know Jeff mentioned that before, but to get the inspection, and how much does that cost?
I can hop in first, Jeff, and you can correct me when I say something off base. There are some local firms that do robotic tank inspections, and I believe that the village used one of those local firms the last time around. And best guess of what that cost is, it is probably in the $4,000 to $5,000 range per tank. And I know we have multiple tanks. We may consider doing more than one tank when we do the inspections, but it's probably somewhere in that $4,000 to $5,000 range per tank. And I can't speak to those firm schedules and availability and that sort of thing, but typically they can turn those inspections around relatively timely. And again, I think probably in the early next year timeframe would be reasonable if we engage them soon. But we would have to really get their schedule and availability.
Yeah, if I might mention, one reason to get this done quickly, because this is an area which we do have to address on the short term, is that if we are going to apply for any grant money, the deadlines for those grants are the CFA, the consolidated funding application, and that's at the end of July. So we need the numbers in time to put in an application for a grant in order to get some help. And as you can see, the total is just for I don't know if you can update those numbers, but you looked at them earlier, around 2 million for a new tank, and less for rehabilitating the current one. But there is significant funds coming down, and we could if we could make that funding cycle, it would be very good.
Yeah, I think that's that would be the target for sure. Let's be ready with this report that's in the format that's acceptable to the CDBG program and the EFC program, and be ready to roll with a strong application come the summertime.
Yeah.
Who makes the call to the inspection company? Is that Jeff?
I can do that. Yeah.
Great.
And I would say, especially with Department of Health recommendations, we should get all three inspected at the same time. And from an economic standpoint, that's probably the way to do it. So even though the others are in better shape, younger tanks, glass lined, we still should get them inspected. So I feel strongly we should do all three at once, and we could act on that fairly quickly here, again, based on their schedule, but move ahead pretty quick on that, should, I think.
Okay, Jeff, then you and I we'll talk about that.
So
Okay.
our other tanks are glass lined?
Yes, Colonial Hills and the Rollins Street. Yes.
Oh, great. Good to know.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll, we've kind of looked at the John Street water storage tank, and we do have a number there, over there, around 2 million to replace. And we may, again, based on the water capacity study, we may find out that we want more than 450,000 gallons if we are deciding to deliver more water to additional areas, additional customers. So I do think the capacity study and the feasibility study kind of dovetail into one another, and we kind of need to know the information from one to also make a final determination on the other. So hopefully we can work out that scheduling. The next item down is the Geyser Road well generator. And that one's a pretty straightforward, just adding a transfer switch and an emergency generator to the wells so that if there's a loss of grid power, we don't have a loss of water supply. And given the price point on that, I think that's something that we could certainly use ARPA funds for, to hit the ground running. Jeff, maybe you can comment on this. Is this something that we can just put out an RFP to have installed, or do we need a little bit?
Sure, it would be, we would need Jason to generate that for us, you know what I mean? Have their engineers look at it, but sure, that's something that we could, move along pretty quickly on. So, and just so folks know, 4A and 4B, those wells don't have a generator, where in other locations we do. So, but those are a couple of our bigger water producers. So, it's a definite go ahead. Eric, I can't. Does that number cover both transfer switch and generator both? Is that just transfer switch?
I am not an electrical engineer, so this is not a number that I carry in my head, but I do seem to recall in the past that a $30,000 should get us a generator and a transfer switch. But again, I'm not an electrical engineer, so that's not a number that I don't think I put that number there. I don't recall exactly where that one came from.
I don't remember, because at one time we talked about just having the building wired for a transfer switch, which it's not, and then a portable generator could be brought in. The better decision would be to just have a permanent generator there, because a lot of times when power goes out, it's a brownout or blackout and people are fighting for generators. So it makes sense to have a permanent generator there. I just don't remember if that 30,000 covers that, but between the two of us, I'm sure we could check on that and know that in days if we're covered there. So
On the second page, it says these are all estimates.
Yeah, they're obviously planning level estimates, and some of these may not we may not have had any information to increase from the 2019 values we came up with. So obviously they could be more, because everything is more right now. So, but I do think that's something that we should definitely put on our radar, and try to expedite that, because now that we have the funds, that seems like low-hanging fruit. So, and then the next item here is the Malta Avenue slope stabilization. And my understanding of this is it's the Malta Avenue section near Malta Avenue Elementary. There may also be another section near a home that's on the creek side of Malta Ave, not too far from that location. I guess what we would need here is probably a geotechnical investigation to determine, the stability of the slope and how soon this needs to be done. Obviously, slope failures aren't something that you can generally predict. You can have heavy rains and a combination of events, and all of a sudden it fails within minutes. So I guess, Eric, what would be the first steps? I assume we'd have to have some sort of geotechnical investigation of the slope.
I guess my recommendation would be the first step might be for our geotechnical engineer and myself to meet with Jeff to take a look at things, just to gauge what we're dealing with. What are we after here? This is not one that I've looked at with my own eyes yet. So that to me seems like the first logical step is to have a geotechnical engineer, myself, meet with Jeff and take a hard look at this and provide some recommendations on how to move forward. If this is, if this is in immediate danger of collapse and we want to move forward, very quickly and expeditiously, that's one thing. If this is more a wait and see, we might want to put some monitoring points in and survey those and check for movement and so forth. So I think we really want to just get our eyes on this one and provide some recommendations on how best to move forward.
All right, so essentially what you're saying is based on that determination of whether it looks like there could be an imminent threat of collapse, or we could do some sort of monitoring program if it doesn't appear that to be an imminent threat.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
It is further east than Malta Avenue School, just so no one's in fear that the school or the guardrail will people park across. It is further east from there, approaching more near Columbia Avenue. So, and
Yeah,
there are a couple houses on that side, but here again, they're not directly involved at this point, depending on what could happen. So I think it should be looked at soon, but it is further east than from the school, more towards the Columbia Ave intersection, just so folks know.
So I guess the next steps on that would be, Eric, maybe scoping something, a scope and a fee for that initial analysis.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, I'd like to get eyes on it first, just so we kind of understand the big picture, and then from there we could give a proposal, with our recommendation of the path forward.
Okay.
And so maybe Jeff and I can take a look at that after Thanksgiving.
yeah. I mean, it depends on how immediate it is. If it's something is immediate, like could happen tomorrow, clearly we have to act. But if it's something that looks like it needs to be addressed in the next couple of years, again, there are, stormwater and funds available that could address, because that is a sizable amount of money to deal with that problem if it exists.
All right, and the next item on here is well 4A redevelopment in Geyser Road. I guess, is that part of our capacity study, Eric?
It is not 4A, and Jeff, please again correct me when I go off straight here. 4A is a well that has not been redeveloped in the past. Wells, from time to time they lose their yield and their capacity and need redevelopment. This is a well in 4A that is housed within a structure in a building, and so the redevelopment is it's not as straightforward as if the well were out in the open and more readily accessible. And so the theory here was let's take the step forward and get 4A redeveloped so we can return that back to its full production capacity.
But that'll affect our capacity then, because if it's not producing now, it would increase the amount we're producing, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. And can you tell me why it's in a building? Was there a reason for that?
I do not know.
Before my time.
Yeah.
Okay, just wondering.
I think it was, 1960 something. So it's just probably the way they did it. And one of the original wells. I mean, it does. You can remove the roof from the structure and redevelop it. It's not as easy because it's in a closure and it can be done. But I'm assuming that's why it maybe never was done. But
When you say
why it was constructed then, I'm not sure why they were in buildings as opposed to open wells.
So the issue with the building is to redevelop it, you need to, complete access. I'm assuming redevelopment means that you're going to bore out the well. Is that the case, or how does that work? What does redevelopment entail?
There's a couple different methods. I am not a hydrogeologist, so I can't speak to these in great detail, but there is one technology that they blast a carbon dioxide type treatment into the formation, and that opens up the voids and returns the capacity. There's another method that Lane Christensen proposes that is not carbon dioxide, and it's something else that's escaping me. They might be just doing an air blast to loosen up the fines and get the fines out, and kind of open the formation back up again. So there's a few technologies that it's basically injecting a fluid or air into the formation to loosen up the fines, get the fines out, and return the formation back to its original capacity.
So
Eric, for the lay people among us, I'm
Yeah.
first among us, what is a fine? Is it a FIND or FINE? Would you define the find or the fine?
Sorry.
Say that 3 times fast.
Fine with an E. So fines in the well world are not a good thing. These are silts and clays and finer materials. Wells that want to move water from the soil into the well cavity. We want big voids. We want gravels. We want sands. We want materials that are going to move water. When fines, FINES, start migrating into the formation and start blocking some of those nice big open voids we have in our sands and gravels, that's when our production starts decreasing. So we want to get those fines back out again and get the formation back up to where it was.
And does this reopening this well, does this in any way entail, like, this may sound, but bear with me, like knocking the building down, or?
No, there's a hatch in the roof. It's
Oh,
it's feasible. It's not easy, but it's very it's feasible. It can be done. So
And
out
Jeff,
of the ordinary, but it can be done. And then to put layman's terms, what Eric's explaining, it's kind of like shaking the dust out of the filter, and now the filter works again. So we got to get the fines out of the surrounding well, and then we'll get more water to the well so we can withdraw it from the ground, kind of a thing in layman's terms. I don't know if that helps. So
It helps a lot, thank you.
and we
How
did
did-
have last summer, Jeff, I can't remember exactly what time frame, but we did engage 2 outfits to do to give us proposals to do the redevelopment. So we've had 2 outfits look at it, examine it, determine how they were going to get in there and do the redevelopment. So we have people that have looked at it and have figured out how they're going to accomplish this redevelopment within a well that is in an enclosure.
one
So
thing,
that was 50,000 or so they came up with?
probably a little less than that, but I'm sure with today's prices,
Right.
it's going to be right around that number. Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, how did this come to our attention? You monitor the wells. Has it declined precipitously, or has it been gradual? Are we at risk of not having enough water, or how's this fit into the bigger picture?
We're not at risk of not having enough water. The well is just producing less, and we just work we have 5 wells. We just work the wells differently and combine them separately so we can still get withdraw the gallonage we need.
Right.
Here again, when they all take turns getting reworked just so they can stay up closer to their max. But
Right.
so it's diminished over the years. It's been a lot of years, but reworking is going to help to bring that gallonage up. We're not, in my opinion, we're not in any danger of not
Yeah.
having enough gallons to withdraw right now.
So this is some sort of like routine maintenance that you do, what, once every 10 years, or?
Probably a good guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. So yeah.
so this,
There's a methodology, and I again I don't know this methodology that intimately, but there's a methodology of examining the drawdown when the pumps are on and it's drawing down the groundwater to fulfill the demand of the pump. The farther it's drawing down is indicating a diminished capacity of the well. So as we're going to keep drawing the groundwater farther down and down and down to achieve the same capacity, that suggests we're starting to lose capacity of that well formation. So the village does a good job at recording data information. They have loggers in their wells, so they can keep track of what the drawdown looks like during pump operation. And so with all those data points, it starts telling you, okay, this well has changed by this many feet to get the same production. Might be time to get this one redeveloped.
I was just
Alright.
wondering, since this sounds like, it doesn't sound critical. I mean, we had put 1 to 2 years, but is that something that, could wait and maybe be combined, with other projects that come out of the water? And in other words, if it has to wait 2 years, would be okay. I mean, I'm just trying to see what things can be put off a bit so that we can, go for some money and versus what really needs to be addressed more immediately.
I think we'll be able to answer that question more effectively once the study that we talked about earlier, this well capacity study, it is complete. Right now, I don't think anybody has enough concrete data to say, how critical that redevelopment is. But hopefully by early next year, when that well study is complete, we'll understand that and be in a better position to, say, hey, this should be done, imminently, or we've got some time here to roll this in with some other grant opportunities.
Okay.
All right. Next item is the Kent Street water main replacement. Roughly 800 feet of water main. I think, I guess my first thought on this, we have a 3 to 5, but how did we come about with determining that it does require replacement? Is it just based on age, or has there been some sort of assessment of its condition? I don't know if Jeff or Eric.
It's
And-
undersized, and in my industry, we don't like to say the break word because we had a rash of breaks in that area. And it's been a few years, but we had 5 within 6 months at one time. So
Oh.
it's kind of
It
thin
sounds
ice.
like it's
It's
due.
kind of thin ice in my opinion. So yeah, let alone
Alright.
it's part of the system that went around the old sock mill, and there are multiple mains, and it's undersized. So yeah, it's way overdue in my opinion. So
Understood.
the 3 years is a push in my opinion. So
So that.
Well, that's good to know.
Can I just jump in for a second? I'm sorry, but I just opened the Q&A, and someone in the Q&A is suggesting that the codes for the meeting access are incorrect and people are having difficulty getting in.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. Some folks are in, some
Yeah,
not.
Okay.
I don't know what to.
I just want to make sure that everybody was seeing that. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, somebody sent, I don't know how to solve that problem. I mean,
Well, who's ever on actually has the correct codes, they could provide them to those individuals.
maybe somebody, yes. So who's it coming from? Does it say who's?
The message came from Frank Rossi.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe Dick Duffy, you can, whatever you have, Dick or Ray Otten, you're on, you can send them the correct, because I know that Dick Duffy and Ray Otten are in, as is, let's see.
We've got,
so is the code same for all? Is that how that works? The code is the same for all? I'm
I think
asking.
this
No,
was different.
there's panelists and then there's.
Yeah, the panelists are one, and then
okay.
okay, so whatever Dick has, and Frank Rossi is in. So,
Frank's the one that left made the Q&A.
okay, well, okay, so he's in, yeah, so maybe Dick or Ray Otten can send it to them, because I'm really not able to access that at this point.
Okay.
All right,
Okay, sorry for interrupting. Just wanted to point that out.
that's
Apologies.
okay.
Thank you. So it sounds like this is kind of a no-brainer, and we don't really, we maybe really want to consider I do know that we do have grants coming, but it sounds like from the period of grants to apply, to receive, to do, and then to actually do the construction, we could be 2 to 3 years out on this anyways. So, is that a fair assessment, Eric?
It is, I guess, I think about projects like this that would be right for CDBG funding. I mean, the CDBG program for infrastructure. Now the village has been determined to be qualifying as a village. They would fund $1 million, up to $1 million per year worth of projects on the infrastructure program. So this would be one that would be, I think, very ripe for CDBG. There's no local match. This is 100% grant funding with no local match. So sort of the best funding that you can get. But in terms of the timing, as Liz mentioned earlier, the CDBG program follows the consolidated funding application process, which historically is announced in, are due in the July timeframe. Awards are typically announced. They haven't been announced yet for 2021. So sometime in November, December timeframe. So best case scenario, if we apply next July, we might hear around this time next year. You'd be designing in early 23 and likely constructing in late 23 or 24, depending on how large this project gets. So it does take time for sure if we're going to pursue the funding route.
Now, we could pursue the funding route and perhaps allocate the funds in our reserve in case it happens sooner. That's probably would be the strategy we could use, is to make sure we have funds allocated or reserved in our fund balance in case we have a catastrophic failure prior to obtaining funding. And I think it's something we have to put aside anyways, because just because we apply for a grant doesn't mean we automatically get it. So
That's correct.
Yeah.
all right, Liz, we go on to the next sheet.
Yep.
Okay, item 7, priority 7. Lewis Street to Chester Street water main. I know we discussed this a while ago. There is a paper street that goes between Lewis and Chester currently. And if we provided an interconnect, I know that would solve some issues. So my thoughts on this is this isn't really anything necessarily critical, but it would be really nice to have. Is that a fair assessment, Jeff? Or
Yeah, we have 2 dead ends, if you will. So both at the end of that, Chester and Lewis. So an interconnection would definitely help with flow and increase and yeah.
I mean, Jeff, being dead ends, we might have some difficulty maintaining chlorine residual. That might be an area that we're flushing and wasting water more often than not, particularly in the summer months when
That's what we have to do, right? Because of
chlorine
the,
gets
yeah.
right. So it becomes somewhat of an operational issue where if we're losing residual and we're out there monitoring and flushing and wasting water, if we have this interconnect and we're moving water, that becomes less of an issue.
Yeah. One of the things is with the CDBG is, as Eric said, we can get $1 million. So we want to package enough projects together. You don't want to go apply for 200,000. You want to apply for close to $1 million.
Correct.
right.
And put,
Yeah, I would agree. I agree. This is definitely one of the ones that's would be good for grant funding. The next one is the stormwater study. And that's an assessment study. And as far as the assessment study goes, I'm assuming we're going to do some sort of inventory of existing condition of stormwater pipes. Is that what would be included in an assessment study? Maybe Eric, you can provide a summary of what we would be doing.
This is one that has not been vetted in any great detail. There's a number of directions this could go, and again, I haven't had a lengthy dialogue with Jeff or anyone on the board about this, but a couple ways this could go. Is it do we want to assess piping condition in certain areas? Is there a belief that piping is degrading and we've got blockages in pipe because of pipe defects? Is there areas that catch basins are in very tough shape that we want to analyze and take a look at and put a project around? Or is this, hey, we've got flooding problems on street X, street Y, and street Z, and how do we best mitigate that flooding? How do we start managing stormwater in a different way? And so that would be more of a holistic hydraulic type of study. So that number at $100,000, without kind of honing that in, not really sure what that number looks like, or how comprehensive of a study that we would need. This would probably need some good thought behind with Jeff and some folks from the board, just to really hone in on what are the priorities we're trying to solve on the stormwater side, and then craft a study around addressing those issues.
Jeff, what do you think what are the main issues with our stormwater system?
Yeah, I think when we developed this list, we were trying to cover the complete infrastructure. So we try to hit on storm, sanitary, and water. There are areas that we have older pipes, older structures, undersized pipes, things that were developed upstream that might not have been engineered properly, larger pipes dumping in the smaller pipes. It's an old village. It's kind of the way you just put things back together back then. I think we would, we haven't had a lot of lengthy time to talk about it, but I could probably come up with 5 or 6 or 10 hot spots that we would start. I mean, obviously the system is large. We know what our outfall situation is from our MS Forest 4 report, but I think we would take a half a dozen hot spots and then start to do a deeper study, analyze it a little further to see what direction we go into correcting some of that stuff. So
yeah, one thing on some of this infrastructure funding that's coming down is the focus on climate and to focus on green infrastructure, and not solving everything with pipes, but other solutions. I know some other communities have gotten grants to implement some green infrastructure, and I have no idea if that would work here or not, but it is one of those words that gets the attention of the grantors.
Mm-hmm. Correct. The EFC's Green Innovation Grant Program, Liz, you're familiar with that one, but that's one that could help fund the green infrastructure side of things. And I think we do want to look for opportunities for green infrastructure and get more water back in the ground instead of using point discharges as routinely as we sometimes do. There might be funding study money under the CDBG technical assistance portion also. I think that they'll fund up to like $50,000 worth of study funds, as I recall. So that might be something we want to examine.
Yeah. So the stormwater is, except for the ones we've seen earlier, isn't something that has to be done in the next year. I think it's a little longer term. If we can get, let's say, a grant next year to do a study, and then the study is delayed, until we get the grant. Does that, make sense or not? In other words, can we delay this study if I think this is true on any of these studies. There are funds to do studies, but then they take applying next summer, waiting until they announce them, and then, you basically add a year to the process.
Right.
Or do we take some of the ARPA money and do the study with the ARPA money? I think that's generally an issue here, with any of these studies that we need in order to apply for large sums of money.
I guess moving forward with this, if Jeff knows of half a dozen locations where he's fairly certain that there are issues that need to be addressed, I would agree, and that we would use ARPA funds to determine that sooner rather than later, so that we have that information for grant applications potentially next year. I again, to try to get the ball, I know we're putting a lot of balls in the air, but I think we're going to have to, just because we're dealing with 20+ years in neglect. So I think we should move sooner rather than later. I do know that obviously, yeah, studies, there could be funding for that study, but I think we may need to push forward with, at least if Jeff can identify locations he's fairly certain with, that definitely need to be addressed and analyzed. I think that would be the next step there.
We could always take it down a step and just, hit the top 1 or 2 or 3 hotspots, as opposed to, the top 6, to try to keep the
Mhm.
funding down, but, get some of them moving. You're right. I agree with that.
Yeah,
And we have to be judicious with this, we don't want to prolong the problem, waiting for, some other source of money. If we
Right.
need to do it now, we need to do it with what we have on hand.
Mhm.
right.
Yeah. I agree with that. And, if we have to adjust the scope based on, our initial look, we do it, but we try to make some inroads on some of our worst case areas.
Yeah, I think it's a good use of that ARPA money is get things going where we can. I mean, we'll have to take everything we talk about today and add it up and see if it's within what the ARPA money that we have. And,
We have left
yeah, that's
that
what
we haven't already allocated,
yeah,
which
Right.
is, at
So-
this point, it's 107,680. It looks like.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, we don't know that study is going to cost 100,000, and if we reduce the scope, it could be 50,000. So, we've got to decide, gotta
Eric,
look.
can you tell me what a unit cost for doing, basically going in and doing a photo log of the stormwater, and what's the going rate nowadays?
We just got a proposal for another project to do some camera work inside some sanitary sewer, and it's up to $3 a foot now to do CCTV work. So that gets you a couple passes on the cleaning, and then the camera. So in the range of $3 a foot.
So I guess that's a benchmark we can use based on.
Yeah, that 36,000 on that sewer is a piece of it. And I think Also with the grants, at least of what I've seen with other municipalities, they take a chunk, the most critical areas, and then put in for that phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. We can't fix it all immediately.
Obviously.
I guess I'd also offer that, storm sewers, we have catch basins, so you can at least get a sense for what the pipe material is of the storm sewer. And we all know what pipe materials are kind of standing the test of time and which ones aren't. And so oftentimes on the storm sewer, you can, avoid doing a lot of camera work just by understanding what the pipe material is and how brittle / corrosive that material is, and how long it's been in the ground.
Right. I would assume it's a combination of things, age, material.
Yeah.
Also, the surrounding soils too, if there's a lot of shifting or heaving, those would all play a part into it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got parts of town that are sand, and then we got parts of town that are clay, right?
Definitely.
Uh,
So that 36,000 is just to do a segment. That was based on the EFG grant, which we applied for 2 times and did not get, but may be well worth applying for it again on the CFA. And even if we, get the 36,000, doesn't mean we can't take another 36,000 out of ARPA and expand the study. So I think going for the money, probably makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, even using the ARPA funds and beyond the 36,000
Yeah,
to do that, so that we will have the study in place
right.
for potential grant applications. I think that's worthwhile, even if we had to increase that amount out of the ARPA funds.
We do have an active EPG application that's in review currently that was resubmitted with the last CFA application. So hopefully we'll be hearing on that in the next
Mhm.
month
And
or two.
is that our second or third try?
It's definitely more than second. I want to say it's at least our third. I think it's our third try.
Why didn't-
I say third time's a charm, maybe.
Third time's a charm. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Well,
Those are tricky. We are a gravity sewer collection system, but by and large, we do have some I&I challenges. We have some infiltration and inflow challenges where clean water is getting into the pipe, but we don't have any real smoking guns. We don't have overflows and real problems. Major problems that other communities do, and so I'm not surprised it's taking a little time, but hopefully we do get there soon.
Mhm. Well, I think it's important, particularly for sewer, probably a higher priority than stormwater, to really get a good assessment of the condition, for planning purposes. I know that, probably the first gauge is if we have any sort of record plans as far as age. Obviously, the first thing to do is look at the oldest pipes first, and then go from there.
I don't know that we have good records, but we'll just have to, we could look to see when they stop using clay pipe. That'll give us an indication.
right.
Right.
Or when
No,
they
we
first,
have
or when they first invented it, I think we have the first piece. So,
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
had sewer breaks, right?
oh, yes, yep, yeah. A couple of large projects we did were emergency projects because of failures. So, yep.
So this is an issue we
Oh,
need.
sure. Yes, it is. I mean, we relined a section of sewer in Milton Avenue from approximately the library to the Washington and Malta Avenue intersection. So that's been relined, before failure, which relining is an option, but yeah, so that gives you an idea of, possibilities and where some of that is. So
The oldest part of town.
yeah, there you go.
So,
Okay, so, I don't know, all the rest of them are to be determined because they all rely on next three on the studies.
right.
Right.
So moving on, well, we have the remainder of the village, which again, this seems like a phased thing where we're gonna look at the oldest first. And obviously, if there's any locations identified where people have had issues, I know I've heard of complaints in the past of sewer backups in the basements. I'm sure those would be on our radar for doing some camera work, just to see if we can determine what's going on there. So I think that may be, I do know we have listed a lot of grants, but we may want to consider scoping it down to critical areas. So
Yeah.
yeah. So moving forward there, we have some more wastewater stuff. Let's see. Yep. Okay, we kind of covered all those. There's a lot of to be determined here.
Yeah,
Yeah. Water meter replacement. This is something we've talked about for a while now. I know that one of our big pushes has been to get a better handle on our water usage because it is one of our revenue streams, pardon the pun, that we do use and helps us maintain our water system. I think that obviously this is something that we certainly want to move towards, and it would simplify the process for everyone, not only the property owner and the water user, but our DPW as well, and would obviously give us a very good handle on our water usage. And I do see the price tag of $1 million. That is a pretty big price tag, but it appears that there's a lot of funding opportunities for this. And I don't know, Eric, can you expand on that?
Sure. I guess, the CDBG program, again, is $1 million per year. I think CBG would be open to funding a project like this. The Green Innovative Grant Program, 2 years ago, they started allowing meter replacements as an eligible project under the Green Innovative Grant Program. And I think that was a 75% grant, if I recall. Don't quote me on it, but it was in that range. And a number of communities have gotten funding for meters over the last couple of years. And meters do tend to be a difficult thing to have metered or have funded when they're sort of standalone. And so if we look at WIA or DWSRF, I think we want to package meters with some other higher priority items to help, boost that funding chance. But there's
I had heard that the CDBG has this CARES program, and I haven't had much time to look at it, but that I was told could provide half of the money, because of it increases water efficiency.
I am not familiar with the CARES program of the CDBG. There may be our funding folks in the office may be familiar. That's not one that resonates with me at this point.
It's a newer, I think. These agencies that give money, they keep coming up with new programs, and this is one that I was told by somebody actually could provide half the money because it is related to you know, the new push to increase efficiency. And
Okay.
definitely increase our efficiency. It would also give us some indication of if we're losing water somewhere, you know, in the system. We really don't know, you know, from our, you know, meters, you know, exactly. We don't have a real good idea of, you know, are we using all the water we produce or
Mhm.
not? I don't know if Jeff can address that.
Is the meter replacement focused on residential meters only, or would the intent be to replace commercial meters as well?
I haven't had the chance. This is something I heard recently, so I haven't had the chance to look at it to see,
Okay.
you know, what it does, if it would replace both or just the residential. But,
Okay.
you know, anything we could replace would be, I think, welcome.
Sure.
Eric, you think that $1 million is somewhat accurate, or is just ballpark?
$1 million seems to be about right to me for 2,400 residential meters. I think that's in the range. That's in the range.
It-
If we start getting into commercial meters, that's a different ball game, because the residential meters are 5/8 by 3/4 inch in size. Once we start getting into larger residential meters, then the price escalates exponentially. But for 2,400 residential, that seems in the range.
We also have several different kinds of meters, right? In the 2,400 different types.
Currently, yes.
Yeah,
This would be replacing a portion or all with the
All of
radio
those.
read.
And okay, we're assuming radio read is I guess we'd have to be, I think, really careful about evaluating, you know, what we replace the current meters with to make sure that, you know, we don't, you know, that we're using a technology that isn't about to go, that is, you know, fundamentally sound and not about to
Get replaced.
get replaced itself,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
I see this as more of a phased approach over, I mean, over a long period of time. Because I know we've already done a lot of meter replacement with standard meters, and just recently trying to catch up with the ones that weren't functioning. So, you know, as far as an expenditure, I don't think this is something that, you know, is a very high priority right now. I do think it's something that we might want to consider a phased approach, that, you know, doing 1% over a period of years, and, you know, maybe roll this in with some other funding. Because again, you know, even if we got half, when we're still spending $500,000 to replace meters that are currently perfectly functional.
Right.
So that's kind of something that, you know, I see is kind of, unless we can tie it in with something else, as far as a standalone, I agree with Eric that it's not really, yeah, well, I just don't think this is one of our, we have time on this one.
I'm not sure how you want to, if I agree on priority, but I don't think in the meter world, we want to phase in over a long period of time, because then you're going to be dealing with two systems. It's going to be more cumbersome. And if you're looking to, you know, check on efficiency, you're not going to sure if you fix the right half or the wrong half. So I think my opinion is it's an all-in thing. When you go for it, we're going radio rate to have half radio read and not half. You're still going to have two billing systems. And I think my feeling is if you're going to go for it, you got to go for it all at once. Here again, I don't picture this program, and I don't think the dollars show this. This is not a public works installation thing. This is a contracted, people
Yeah.
come in and they put in 2,400 connections in a one season type of thing, and it's over with and you're up and running. So it's truly radio read and billing system phasing it in, the technology could change, and I don't know, I just don't picture it that way. You know,
Yeah.
whether or not the funding is there, I'm not sure if I understand that part of it, but I think it's an all at one time, get it done with, in my opinion, so.
I was going to say the same thing, Jeff. I mean, if we convert to radio read, then we are revamping and starting over how we do billing. Billing will be very automated, and so to manage two different, billing processes for some period of time might be quite challenging. So I tend to agree that that's something if we do it, probably want to do it in a reasonably condensed amount of time.
Right, I think that's what Ballston did, right, Ben? They replaced all of theirs at once.
I'm not sure exactly how extensive that was.
It was,
I don't know.
it was somewhere on the same order. But
It was a lot of meters, but I don't know what percent of the
yeah,
town.
no, but they did it all at once.
Yeah.
The village of Scotia did that. I think they have more connections than we do, and that's how they did it. I think they were, 1,415, but I think they had 3,800 connections, but that's how they did it all in one season, contracted it out. They work with contractors on location and that kind of a thing, but that's what they did, and they did it in one season, and they're up and running, and it's radio read, the village of Scotia.
Do you know how they paid for it?
I don't remember that part. No, I don't.
Something worth checking, in like communities that have done it, how they've financed it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a grant or whether they just bonded it, but I can make a call and find out, so.
Mhm.
I guess if it could be rolled into like a water infrastructure,
If
if
they
depending
allow
on
it.
what matching funds would be associated with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the WIA grant on water, they're due next Monday, coincidentally. But they fund 60% on the drinking water side, 25% on the sanitary sewer side. So under WIA, if we were successful, we could get 60% funding on water improvements, including meter replacement.
Yeah. So my impression in going to NICOM meetings and such, talking to all the engineers and stuff, is that most of these programs are funded by a number of grants. So, they get part of the money from this one, and then they get the match from someone else, and then there's, a piece from another agency. So it's pretty, the funding structure is not simple. It's not like you just go to one agency and get your money. You've got to go to a number, and then you may end up, borrowing the remaining balance, in one of these long-term loans. So it's not simple.
Eric, you said that you're applying to WIA for the village.
No, he said the deadline.
No,
Oh, I thought he said he had something in the works.
I apologize. My son just came to say good night, so I apologize. I turned off for a second there. There are no applications for Ballston Spa that Chazen is helping to prepare. No.
Oh, okay.
we missed this one. Well, we didn't have a project really that's ready to go to WIA. Right? We need, it's like in the transportation grant, you have to have it planned and have the costs and the specifications to go after one of these grants. And that's talking about all these studies, because that'll give us that information.
Right. The WIA, the entry into WIA is an engineer's report, completed seeker, completed SHPO, a bond resolution, and that may be kind of the basic entry.
Yeah.
So they want to know that you're committed. They want to see you've put some skin in the game. You've done your planning. This is a priority project. You've gone through the bond resolution, which can be challenging and sometimes contentious. You've committed to a report, and you've identified this as a priority project.
So this is what we get done next year.
Okay, I just want to point out that it is 8:20, so let's keep moving along here. And Eric, you have disappeared from the screen. I don't know, from my screen at least.
Really?
I did stop my video for a second when my son came down to say goodnight, and I turned it back on again. I see myself on my screen now,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm-
All right,
can
that's
see.
fine. Okay, that's fine.
All
Okay.
right. So since we're not going to talk about facilities, the valve removal, I'm just going to ask Jeff quickly here. Is that something? Is there any reason that can't wait to see if funding will be available for it? Is there any reason to move on it sooner rather than later?
No, and list of things, it's kind of where it is on the schedule.
Right.
It could wait.
Oh.
I mean, I guess it haunts me, but it can wait.
The lower price, but we can bundle it in with a bigger
Right.
potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff, that might be one we want to poke our head in sometime and just get our eyeballs and make sure there's no gut feeling that there's some more imminent issue,
Right,
that might be worthwhile.
right.
Okay.
And I don't, at that time, Eric, maybe we can even flag a better number. I don't, and we that was a spitball number, so maybe we can,
Right.
maybe it's less expensive than we think, and we could handle it with village funds or something, that kind of a thing. So
Yeah, just if it's around that amount, it could come out of ARPA or
So
our own funds.
Jeff, why does this haunt you?
it's just old valves inside of old structures that haven't been
Ah, okay.
turned in a long time. So they're fine where they're at right now. If we stop talking about them, we're probably going to be okay. We need to keep them on the radar. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, understood. And I mean, at a $20,000 removal, that's not a real heavy lift if it, we need to do it in an emergency. So,
The salt storage there relates more to the facility. Don't you think we can hold on that? Because
yes, I agree. Now the curb study and curbs, those are basically, the reason they're labeled stormwater is because we have a lot of locations within the village where, due to the lack of curbs, our runoff from our roads and other locations tends to go into the neighboring properties. And by installing curbs, we could direct it to existing or potential future catch basins. I see it at the end here, but I think it's got it should be farther up the list, because I know I've had discussions with Jeff, and there's a lot of folks who have complained about water in their basement or water in their yard. And it's because when years ago, they did the drainage on a lot of the roads, a lot of thought wasn't given to stormwater runoff, and where it was going to go. I see here we have $25,000 for a study. I guess, is that something that, maybe we could use ARPA funds for?
or
to
could
move
we
that
combine
along
it?
quickly?
Could we just combine it with our stormwater study? Just to, do it
Maybe, yeah,
because it is an aspect of stormwater. I know there are plenty of places we don't have curbs. And I do know from looking at dollars on the transportation side, with that curbs are expensive
yeah.
Mhm.
to put in curbs. So,
Totally.
yeah, so when we looking, at sidewalk installation and all that, the discussion was with curbs or without curbs, and it was a significant difference. So I think that fits with the stormwater assessment, make sure that it's included in that assessment.
Yeah, and I think that's something we could work with Jeff to scope. I'm sure we can, he knows the roadways where they might benefit the most from having curbing to direct the water flow.
Thinking this out loud too, that, you know, curbing and installing curbing on roads that don't have curbing currently goes hand in hand with paving and all those things. So it's almost like the annual paving operation and potential curb addition or curb replacement should potentially be thought about in tandem to, you know, if we're going to put curbing in a road that doesn't have it currently, but that isn't on the paving cycle, you know, it's a decent amount of kind of fussy handwork that's going to be quite expensive, as Liz pointed out.
Yeah, and also a lot of these projects, if you're going to be tearing up the road to new pipes in or any of that, that should be, you know, coordinated with paving and coordinated with installation or replacement of sidewalks. I mean, doing a chunk of road and doing all of it is more efficient than doing it piecemeal. And, you know, you don't want to like put in curbs and sidewalks and then go in 2 years later and put pipes in. So, and also some of these grants will pay for the paving and the sidewalks if you're doing a project and it's under infrastructure. So there are, you know, programs where they say, well, you got to replace that. So that's part of this project.
Correct.
So it's finessing everything. I think we've come, you know, just the next page, just for people to see what the alphabet soup looks like. This, you know, just as a reminder, the income survey was completed this year, and we qualify as a hardship community, which allows us access to CDBG funds, which are only available to communities that meet that threshold, certain USDA, and also puts us in a more competitive position for other grants. And the new IIJA, the new funds that have come out have a lot of focus also on the low income population. So having that designation, but we've got ARPA, IJJ, WIA, you know, the ones in italics are loans, CDBG, green innovation. You know, there are, I think, 10 sources, and who knows with, you know, what's coming out of Washington, there may be some more programs. So, you know, Mayor Fitzpatrick is correct that, you know, if you are looking to, you know, make improvements on your infrastructure, now is the time, because it's a national focus and there is money. So I think for us to, you know, act quickly to get some of these studies done and use the ARPA funds for that will put us in good position, because you have to remember every other municipality that's got infrastructure issues is going to be doing the same.
Okay,
That's
right. Sean, that's, okay, thank you. All right, so let's talk in the next couple of minutes about what our next steps are going to be. You know, I have a couple of things here where we want to sooner rather than later, the next couple of weeks, go over the you know, look in terms of sites or grounds for the water tower. I have also here expedited, what do I have? The Geyser Road well generator, like that gets moved up. And what was the other one I had? This is, you know, sooner, the Malta Avenue slope stabilization, that's something after Thanksgiving, you're just going to take a quick look at it, but let's just figure out, you know, what we're going to do in terms of this how can we modify, maybe we can do based on everybody's understanding, this chart and, reorganize it and put some notes in to tell us, what we should be doing within like, the next several weeks.
I think that makes sense to, put in the next steps and then have a, expected date of completing them.
Circulated via email. Okay. All right. Would you do that, Liz? Are you willing to do that or?
Well, I need input from the folks. I think, Sean, you and I can go through it and then if we have
Add your stuff and
Right.
add your stuff and pass it back and forth. Yeah.
and Jeff on when they can get things done. That
Mhm.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Sorry, I was frozen for a few minutes there, just got back, so I don't know what happened, kicked me out, so I'm
We're
back.
talking about, some of the things that we want to get accomplished in the next month, like, I
Okay.
think, the period, some of the things that were mentioned, and so we want to get them written down and, indicated that these are going to get done in the next month, these, things that you said, so.
Sure.
Sean and I can get together from our notes and then touch base with you guys the way we've been doing all of this the last week is, via email back and forth and, come up with the short-term goals,
Sure,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, where our biggest push forward is probably doing site visits for potential locations
Right.
to include in the scoping for the
Hmm.
feasibility study, preferably before we got to walk through 2 feet of snow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd say in the upcoming weeks, we need to schedule that. And it might be, a couple of visits to different locations. I think the first thing we probably need to do is just sort of look on a map and see, where, we could put something where we have property that
You-
would make sense.
That I have marked as expedite. And also, Jeff, you and I should talk about this whole thing about, the inspection.
sure,
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, as far as an alternate location for the water tower, you want something uphill. And, there is property that we own in Milton. But, we'll have to look into, is it zoned such that we can put a water tower on our property up there if that's an alternative we want to look at.
mhm.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Any other questions so far or any other comments or?
So moving forward with the generator, was that just simply putting out a request for bid? Or do we need a little bit of a study or something developed by the engineer?
yeah, Geyser's got to look at it, we, size and existing wiring, yeah, they've definitely got to take a look at that to help us with that. I don't think it's, super involved, but it's definitely
We
an
have to,
engineering firm to look at it for us, so.
Right.
we'd have to build a structure to house the generator, or is it standalone?
There's all different types. You could do standalone with a, roof over top, that type of a thing. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And-
here now, their electrical division might have, already have done some and, and recently, so they might have a good beat on something like that. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of outdoor rated generators that don't have enclosures. I mean, it sort of depends. I mean, some people like to have an enclosure. So if you're doing any work on them, you're out of the weather, out of the snow. But I think customarily outdoor generators are just that. They're designed for outdoors. They're sound attenuated. and they're suitable for outdoor install.
Right. Actually, we have one at the police station, which just sits on a pad in a parking lot.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Yeah. And what's, for this type of purchase, is that below our bidding level? Or I'm trying to remember what our rules are, is, you know, do we, whether we have to put things out to bid versus just getting multiple quotes? I think, I'm trying to remember, it was 35,000, wasn't it? I think. I don't know if that applies to this equipment or not.
So Eric, I guess how quickly could we get a scope and fee on determining what type of generator and what's entailed?
I think that question, I think in a week or so, we could have a proposal to you. The level of detail might change if we're able to do this and avoid the normal public procurement process. I mean, if we can do something that is abbreviated and give to 3 contractors that we trust and not go through the full public bidding contract document development process, we're going to save some time and energy on our part. If we've got to do public bid, it just means more work, more specifications, some of that sort of thing. So
Well, I think this is a public works contract, so it's public works contracts below 35,000.
Yeah. So
that-
it's,
RFPs probably, right?
No,
Yeah.
35,000, below 35,000 is, I mean, we should check this, but 2 verbal quotes. An RFP is for, RFP is over 35,000. If this is a public works contract,
I
which
believe
it
Sure it
is,
is. Yeah.
it is.
it is.
Rather than a purchase contract, rather than a contract for services, I guess, purchase contract. So this is, if it's over 35,000, you need to do a full RFP.
Yeah, and that's,
If it's between $20,000 and $35,000, you need to have 3 written quotes.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I'm reading from our,
So I guess we make that determination from the power consumption of the existing pumps and what size generator. I mean, is that?
yeah,
it
I mean, I
sounds
think,
like-
I think we would have an electrical engineer take a look at it, make sure that we're sizing a generator properly based on the peak loads of of the motors, and make sure we have the right generator selection from an equipment standpoint. And then, and I guess maybe at that point we can talk with Cummins or some other generator manufacturers just to kind of hone in the number, and that might dictate what procurement method we're going to do. If we can do a 3 written quote method without producing full blown construction documents, or if it looks like it's leaning over the 35,000, then we've got to do a more traditional design bid build process.
Good. So I guess
So-
as soon as that can happen,
Okay.
I realize we're piling it on.
That's okay. That is okay.
Yeah, Eric, that was my question. So in terms of your capacity, what we talked about was a water well capacity study. Jeff's going to call the water tower inspection company, and while he does that, he's also going to work with you to start to identify tower site inspection or tower sites and options. That generator we just talked about, the Malta Ave slope, stormwater hotspots, obsolete valve removal, and sanitary sewer study potentially. So you are able to, do you have enough capacity in-house for that, for all this stuff?
Yeah, we do. And
You
then,
think?
one of the nice things is that, we are a reasonably large company. We've got resources. My team doesn't do electrical design. We don't do geotechnical designs. We'll have other teams that will support, those 2 projects. My team would focus on the water tower, stormwater, and sanitary.
okay.
And so There'll be a number of people involved.
Let's
What I
not,
would like, if I may, is Eric, when when we're working on what our next steps are going to be and what you're going to be doing, I'd like to have some kind of a letter or written, outline for all of these projects, what you think your your hours and your time would be. So just so we know, I'm speaking now for our treasurer, who is not on the call, who that'll be the first question she asks me tomorrow, so that we just have a general idea, because we're paying you pretty much, we pay you by the hour, how much, doing these things is likely to cost us in the next, 3-4 months.
That's fair. And the way that we have, generally operated in the past, when someone on the board or Jeff or Scott, when somebody needs something, we react to it, and we
Absolutely.
might bill based on our time. When we're looking at what I would call these capital projects, we would prepare a written scope
Right.
proposal with a fee, and we would move forward, once the board authorizes that.
Okay, good.
okay.
All right, great. All right, I think now, does anybody have anything else? I don't want to cut anybody off.
No, I think, we'll work out the details.
All right, well, in that case, I am going to open it up to open it up to the public. So anybody who would like to speak or ask a question, hopefully this will work. They can raise their hand. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people. I'm not seeing any questions.
Can we put them all to sleep
Yeah, I don't know. My God,
with
I mean,
all
they're
this?
still hanging in here. God bless them. Nobody, huh? Okay, I'm not, is anybody else seeing any hands? Liz, are you're
No,
co-host? You
there-
see?
There's some Q&A.
that was from before, I think. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
when
that's from
Frank was
before.
talking about them. Let me double check. Where is my,
There is a hand raised. Mr. Dick Duffy has raised his hand.
Okay, Mr. Duffy, okay. Mr. Duffy, there you go, Dick.
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, this is Dick Duffy, live 21 Division Street, Ballston Spa, and I'm calling in from Ocala, Florida right now.
Oh, gosh.
And
You
just
had
so
to
you know,
say
it was
that,
83 today.
it's not
Lucky
that
you.
cold here.
But my concern, I listened to and I realize everything that needs to be done in the village. There's no doubt in my mind. Well, my concern is you went around the village DPW garage, and that should be way up on our list with the condition of that garage and the working conditions in that garage. It's amazing that OSHA hasn't shut us down with that garage. And I'm hoping that it's not going to get pushed aside, that we're going to work on something for that. And if you are, do you have any plans of rough ideas that you would like to talk about? Thank you.
Okay, Dick, we are working on that. That is top of mind. I mentioned that is a quote unquote facility. And as I said at the beginning, we're doing water, stormwater, and in this infrastructure, we are going to talk about facilities. But that being said, finding a new home for DPW is our first priority. And I think I mentioned, I don't know if you were at the last meeting, that we know we're looking for a new spot, because we tried to relocate the DPW we had an idea to locate it at what we call the stump dump on Malta Avenue, which is where we put our snow and our tree refuse and things like that. And we went, but it's in the town of Malta. We went to a meeting there, Trustee Raymond and myself, and we got a hard stop. It's land conservancy, and they said there's no way they're going to allow us to put anything there. So we know we are that we have to find a new home for DPW. So that's the top of mind. We don't have anything right now, but it is something we are working on.
Yeah, and the thing is just roughly looking at their needs without doing a, detailed assessment. We're assuming, the current building is about 9,000 square feet, and they probably need at least double that in order to, get everything undercover and have room to work and
Yeah.
not be parking trucks, 1 inch from the wall. And so, and then if one option may be to, return that parcel which we're paying taxes on and can't develop, to Malta or, land conservancy organization. And then, if we can find a spot large enough, maybe 5 acres or more, then,
Where are you
we
finding
can,
that in the rules?
what? Excuse me,
We
I-
lost you, Dick.
I didn't hear you, Dick.
We didn't hear the last of it.
Uh,
Go ahead.
You hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can't hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, but I just a concern of mine. I mean, it's been downhill for years for that. That's an old Chevrolet garage way back when, and most of us were kids when that was in business. And it's just way overdue. And I would just hope, I know this isn't the conversation or the time for it, but I hope it becomes a top priority. That's my concern.
It is.
It is.
It is. Thank you. Thank
But
you.
fortunately, it would have been nice if we could have just moved it to Malta and we could, start designing a building, but that's gonna, means we gotta find another site. If you know of any property that's the right size, please let us know. We'll take a look at it.
Okay, do we have anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Except for your comment on being in Florida when the rest of us aren't, that's very well received. Okay, do we have anybody else?
Don't see anyone.
Nope.
No.
Okay, with that, I think then we shall end the meeting. I want to thank you all for your participation, both the members of the public and everybody who worked on this and who will continue to work on this. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Liz. And with that, I'm going to end. Okay.
Thank you. Good
Thanks,
night.
everybody.
Thank you
Take
very much.
care.
Good night.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.